Have you noticed how lately your spirit refuses to stay asleep? Why familiar routines suddenly feel heavy, even though nothing dramatic has changed on the outside? Why your heart races for no visible reason, as if something unseen is counting down? What if this tension is not anxiety but awareness? What if your soul recognizes a narrowing window before your mind does chosen one? Pause right here. This question is not meant to comfort you. It is meant to awaken you, because somewhere deep inside, you already know this. You are standing in front of a door. Not a physical door, a spiritual one. A decision point, a moment where neutrality expires. You've been telling yourself you'll decide later, pray later, act later, but later is quietly losing its power. Heaven is not shouting. Heaven is leaning in, waiting to see if you will notice. This is why the message feels intense. This is why your chest feels tight. This is why distractions no longer work the way they used to. When God prepares to move you forward, comfort becomes unreliable. Silence becomes loud. Delay becomes expensive. It was proclaimed by Jesus himself in the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 8. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. Read that slowly. The door is already open, not because you are strong, but because you are faithful. Not because you have everything figured out, but because you didn't quit. Heaven acknowledges your exhaustion without disqualifying you. That alone should steady your breathing. Now bring this into your real and ordinary life. Think about your career. You wake up early or you answer emails, you meet deadlines. From the outside, it looks stable, but inside, you feel boxed in. You sense that your creativity, leadership, or vision is underused. You've thought about changing direction, starting something, speaking up, but fear keeps whispering. You don't have enough strength for that. And yet this verse says the open door appears while you have little strength, not after you gain more. Or consider your finances. You're careful, responsible, you plan, you calculate, you cut back. Still, you feel stuck in cycles instead of growth. You sense God nudging you toward a bolder step, investing in a skill, launching an idea, giving when it feels risky, but you hesitate because you don't feel ready. What if readiness was never the requirement? What if obedience was, look at your family life. You're the dependable one, the listener, the fixer. You absorb stress so others can breathe. But you rarely speak your own needs. You tell yourself it's not the right time. Yet lately, resentment tries to creep in. Fatigue deepens. The door here may not be about leaving, but about finally being honest. Setting boundaries or stepping into a role God has been preparing you for. This is the tension of the open door. It does not force you, it invites you, and invitations expire. The countdown is not God rushing you, it's clarity replacing delay. 10 seconds is symbolic of urgency, not panic. When heaven opens a door, it does not beg, it presents. You either step forward, or you remain where you are, and where you are will eventually stop fitting you. Here is the hope most people miss: you do not step through alone. The same God who opens the door stands on the other side of it. Provision follows movement. Strength renews after obedience. Peace settles after decision. Imagine this instead of fear. Imagine waking up knowing you answered the call. Your work aligns with your values. Your finances are no longer driven by fear, but by wisdom and trust. Your family relationships shift because you showed up as your true, healed self instead of a silent survivor. This is not fantasy, and this is the future attached to the door. But let me ask you plainly, no metaphors, no softness. What keeps you hesitating when you already know what God is asking of you? Chosen one, this is your moment of awareness. Not the breakthrough yet, but the recognition that it is near. Do not scroll past this like every other message. Sit with it. Let it search you. If this spoke to you, take a second to like this message. Share it with someone who feels stuck but called. And subscribe so you stay connected to what's unfolding next. And now, as a quiet but intentional response, mark this decision point. At the end of this section, comment 444 below, not as noise, but as alignment, a signal that you see the door and you are ready to move. You feel it now, the resistance, not the obvious kind, but the subtle weight that presses in when you are closest to movement. Doubt sharpens. Old habits call louder. People who never questioned your comfort suddenly question your change. This is the moment most chosen ones misread. They assume resistance means danger. In truth, resistance often means proximity. Pressure increases because the door is real. You are not imagining the tension in your thoughts. You are not overthinking the heaviness in your chest. When a breakthrough approaches, clarity threatens the structures built to keep you small. What you are feeling is not chaos, it is exposure. The life you have been tolerating can sense it is about to lose you. Notice how distractions suddenly multiply. Notifications feel urgent. Old temptations resurface. Familiar fears replay like a loop. It is not random. When you are about to step forward, the past always tries one last negotiation. Scripture addresses this exact moment. The prophet Elijah spoke as recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 18, verse 21. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. This is not a rebuke, it is a line in the sand. Wavering is more dangerous than outright rebellion because it feels safe while quietly draining your authority. Half decisions produce full exhaustion. You feel tired not because you are doing too much, but because you are divided. Think about a real situation in your life right now. At work, you know the role no longer fits. You sense God calling you to lead differently, create something new, or walk away from an environment that numbs your spirit. Yet you keep saying yes out of fear of instability, fear of disappointing others, fear of starting over. You are not choosing peace, you are choosing familiarity, and familiarity is costing you clarity. Or consider your inner life. You pray, but you also numb. You seek God, but you also escape. You want healing, but you avoid stillness because stillness might ask something of you. You are wavering between surrender and control, hoping God will bless what you refuse to release. That tension is what keeps you restless at night. Even in relationships, this shows up. You stay silent to keep peace. You tolerate patterns that wound you because confrontation feels risky. You tell yourself love means endurance, but God never called you to abandon truth to maintain connection. Wavering turns love into self-betrayal. Here is the sobering truth: indecision is still a decision. Every time you hesitate, you vote for the version of life you already know. And the life you already know is shrinking. But hear this carefully, there is still hope here. The question Elijah asked was not to condemn, it was to clarify. Heaven does not demand perfection. Heaven demands direction. God can work with weakness. He can work with fear. What he will not work with is perpetual hesitation. This is why the resistance feels personal. Because it is personal. Your calling threatens the comfort zones of people around you and the illusions within you. The door ahead requires one thing: wavering cannot give commitment. Yet imagine the alternative. Imagine waking up without that constant inner debate. Imagine your energy returning because your soul is no longer split. Imagine decisions becoming cleaner, not easier, but clearer. This is what happens when you stop oscillating and choose alignment. God is not asking you to know every step. He is asking you to stop standing between two paths. Let me ask you directly, without softening it, what are you still entertaining that God has already asked you to decide about? This is the narrowing point, not punishment, precision. The closer you get to purpose, the less room there is for ambiguity. And while that feels uncomfortable, it is also merciful, because clarity is kinder than confusion. You are not late, but you are being pressed to choose. The resistance you feel is not proof you are wrong. It is evidence that neutrality is expiring. And once neutrality expires, movement becomes inevitable, either forward in obedience or backward into old cycles. This section is not about action yet. It is about honesty. About recognizing that wavering is no longer sustainable. About understanding that the door ahead does not require you to be fearless, only faithful enough to stop standing still. The next step will ask more of you. But first, this must settle. Divided hearts do not cross thresholds. There is a moment in Scripture that feels brief but echoes loudly across generations. It is not about a battle, a miracle, or a sermon. It is about a glance, a single look backward, a hesitation wrapped in memory. As the city burned and the sky cracked with judgment, Lot and his family were pulled out of destruction. They were given clear instruction: do not linger, do not delay, do not look back. The way forward was narrow but protected. The past was familiar but fatal. And yet someone looked back. The story does not tell us her name. She is remembered only by her decision. Not because she was wicked, but because she was attached. Her heart was still tangled in what she was leaving behind. In that one moment, nostalgia outweighed obedience. The book of Genesis records it plainly, without drama. It is written in the book of Genesis, chapter 19, verse 26, but Lot's wife looked back and she became a pillar of salt. This is not a story about curiosity. It is a story about attachment. Salt preserves what is dead. And that is what looking back does. It freezes you in what God is trying to end. Now bring this out of ancient history and into your everyday life. You may not be fleeing a burning city, but you are leaving a season. And that season, though unhealthy, was familiar. It had routines, faces, patterns you learned to survive in. And even when God calls you forward, part of you still wants to glance back, not because it was good, but because it was known. Think about your past career. You left or are about to leave a role that drained you, but you still replay the recognition you once had, the comfort of knowing expectations, the identity you built there. You scroll through old emails, old achievements, old versions of yourself, and then without realizing it, your heart begins to ache for what God already rescued you from. Or consider a relationship. It hurt you, limited you, kept you small. Yet you remember the good days, the laughter, the moments before things broke, and you wonder, what if I had stayed? What if I tried harder? That backward glance keeps you emotionally tied to something that can no longer carry you forward. Even spiritually, this happens. You remember who you were before obedience felt costly, before you had to set boundaries, before conviction sharpened your choices. You miss the ease of blending in. You miss being unchallenged. And quietly, you resent the weight of calling even though it is shaping you. Here is the danger no one talks about. Looking back does not return you to the past. It immobilizes you in the present. Lot's wife did not run back to the city. She stopped moving altogether. And that is what happens when nostalgia interrupts obedience. You don't go backward, you become stuck. frozen between who you were and who you are called to become, preserved in indecision. But here is the hope hidden in this story. The warning exists because escape was real. The path forward was valid and the protection was active. God was not trying to trap her, he was trying to save her. The same is true for you. This call to move forward is not harsh. It is merciful. You are not being asked to forget your past. You are being asked not to anchor yourself to it. There is a difference. Your memories can inform you, but they cannot lead you. The moment you let the past guide your steps, you slow your obedience. And delayed obedience always carries a cost. Imagine instead what happens when you keep your eyes forward. Imagine your energy returning because you are no longer rehearsing old scenes. Imagine your vision sharpening because you stop comparing tomorrow to yesterday. Imagine your faith deepening because you trust that what's ahead, though unfamiliar, is protected. The future does not need you looking back. It needs you moving forward. Let me ask you something uncomfortable but necessary. What are you still emotionally looking back at, even though God already told you to leave it behind? This is not about shame. It is about awareness. Awareness creates movement. Movement creates momentum. You cannot step fully into the next season while carrying souvenirs from the last one. Some things must be remembered without being revisited. Chosen one, you are not losing anything of value by obeying. What is leaving your life is not provision, it is limitation. What is burning behind you is not home, it is bondage. And this time, you are not being dragged out. You are being trusted to walk forward with intention. If this speaks to you, mark this moment quietly but deliberately. At the end of this section, write this short declaration in the comments. No looking back, not as performance, as posture, as a decision to keep your eyes on what God is unfolding rather than what He already closed. There comes a moment when movement is no longer about escape, but about crossing. You have left what burned, you have stopped looking back. Now you stand in a narrowing space where hesitation feels heavier than fear. This is the doorway few speak of, the one that quietly separates observers from carriers, listeners from those entrusted with weight. Crossing does not announce itself. It does not demand witnesses. It happens in stillness, when no one is clapping, when no one is counting your courage. It is a decision made in the unseen, where faith is not proven by noise but by direction. This is where many chosen ones pause, not because they doubt God, but because they underestimate what obedience will cost. You ask questions that sound reasonable but feel restless. What if I fail? What if this costs me comfort? What if I walk alone for a while, yet deep inside, you already know the answer that keeps returning? Scripture names this place with unsettling honesty. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 13, "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it." The narrow gate is not cruel, it is intentional. It filters what cannot follow you into the next season. Old dependencies, old applause, old versions of yourself that survived but never healed. Bring this into your real breathing life. In your work, the wide road offers speed without meaning, compromise without resistance. The narrow gate asks you to move slower but truer, to choose work that does not just pay you but aligns you. That choice feels risky, but it carries peace no promotion can imitate. In your finances, the wide road whispers indulgence disguised as reward. The narrow gate invites discipline disguised as trust. One empties you quietly, the other builds you patiently. In your relationships, the wide road keeps you liked, the narrow gate keeps you honest. One avoids tension, The other creates transformation, and transformation always costs familiarity. Crossing feels lonely not because you are abandoned, but because clarity reduces crowds. Noise falls away, validation thins out, and in that silence, something steadier replaces it: conviction. Here is what few realize: the narrow gate is where resonance begins. When you walk this path, you start recognizing voices that speak the same language as your spirit. You notice words that feed instead of flatter. You linger where truth feels warm instead of loud. You don't need to be told to stay, you want to. Sometimes that resonance looks like quietly passing the light forward, letting someone else see what helped you see. Sometimes it looks like choosing to remain close to reminders of your calling, especially on days when the road tightens. Sometimes it simply means staying present instead of disappearing back into noise. None of this is demanded. All of it is offered. Think of it like this: when you find a well in the desert, you don't shout, you drink, then mark the place so others can survive too. When a path keeps you steady, you walk it again. When a voice reminds you who you are, you stay within hearing distance. That is what this moment is about: not pressure, but recognition. Let me ask you gently but directly: which part of your life is still standing at the gate, waiting for permission you don't need? Chosen one. The crossing is voluntary, always has been. God does not push, He trusts, and trust is heavier than force. If this message feels like a quiet confirmation rather than a command, honor that. If sharing it feels like leaving a lantern lit behind you for someone else, let it glow. If staying connected feels like choosing to walk with others who understand the narrow way, remain, not because you were told to, but because something in you recognizes the path. The gate is still open, the road is still narrow, and your step when you choose it will be enough. Some journeys are not announced with banners, only with a quiet knowing. If your heart feels steadier here, it is because alignment has a sound. You don't chase it, you recognize it. And recognition, once awakened, gently reshapes where you choose to linger. There are paths you walk alone, and others you walk remembering you are not alone. Staying near what strengthens your sight is not dependence, it is wisdom. When the road narrows, you don't scatter. You walk with intention, carrying light enough to see and enough to share. There is a point in every crossing where intention is no longer enough. You've seen the door. You've stopped wavering. You've crossed the narrow gate. Now comes the moment that separates insight from transformation, the moment of sealing. A seal is not loud, it is decisive. In ancient times, a seal marked ownership, protection, and finality. Once sealed, something could not be casually reopened. Spiritually, a seal is a chosen action that locks alignment into place before emotions try to renegotiate. Because emotions always arrive late and often argue against what you already know is right. This section is not about inspiration, it is about instruction. Here is the first directive: choose the seal. A seal must be tangible. Something your future self cannot easily undo when fear resurfaces. Not dramatic, practical. For one person, the seal might be deleting a number you keep returning to when you feel lonely. For another, it might be sending an email you've been postponing, resigning from what drains you, or applying for what stretches you. For someone else, it could be setting a fixed time each day to be alone with God, not when it's convenient, but when it costs you comfort. Seals work because they outpace emotion. Emotion says, wait until you feel confident. Obedience says, move while clarity is present. Now hear the second directive act before you feel ready. Read that again. This is crucial. Readiness is often a disguise for fear that wants more time. But calling rarely arrives with emotional certainty. It arrives with conviction. Conviction whispers, "This is right," long before confidence agrees. Think about daily life. In your work, you may be waiting to feel brave enough to speak up, start, or step out. But courage rarely precedes action. Courage is generated by movement. You don't feel strong and then act, you act, and strength follows. In your finances, you may be waiting to feel safe before being disciplined, generous, or strategic. But peace does not come from excess. It comes from order. Acting before comfort retrains your trust. In relationships, you may be waiting to feel calm before having a necessary conversation. But clarity often arrives after truth is spoken, not before. Acting early prevents emotional buildup from distorting your message. This principle is ancient and confirmed by Scripture. The Apostle Paul wrote in the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 1, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Notice faith has substance before visibility, evidence before proof. Faith moves first. Feelings catch up later. Here is where many chosen ones stumble. They confuse hesitation with wisdom. They say they are being careful, when in reality, they are avoiding the discomfort of early obedience. But delayed obedience weakens clarity. The longer you wait, the louder your doubts become. This is why sealing matters. Let me give you a practical structure. Today or tomorrow, choose one action that cannot be easily reversed. Something small but firm. A boundary, a schedule change, a financial decision, a spoken truth. Write it down. Name it. That is your seal. Do not wait for motivation. Motivation is unreliable. Discipline is faithful. Now imagine what happens after the seal. The mind stops debating. The heart stops oscillating. Energy returns not because life is easier, but because direction is settled. Seals reduce inner noise. They tell your soul, this decision is no longer up for discussion. Here is the hope in this: God responds to sealed decisions, not perfection commitment. When heaven sees movement, provision aligns, support appears, strength renews. But let me ask you directly, and answer honestly, what action have you been postponing, pretending you're not ready for? Even though you already know it's required, this is where your story shifts from listening to building. You don't need 10 seals, you need one. One decisive step taken before emotion catches up. One act that says, "I am done circling." And when you do this, something unexpected happens. You stop feeling chased by time. Time begins to serve you and momentum replaces anxiety. Faith stops being theoretical and becomes lived. Chosen one. This is not pressure. This is empowerment. You are trusted with agency. You are invited into partnership. So mark this moment not for visibility, but for accountability. Choose a number that represents sealing and completion. At the end of this section, comment 888 below as a declaration: I seal what God has shown me, and I act before I feel ready. Let that number be a quiet reminder to yourself, a marker in the timeline of your obedience. The seal is chosen, the action is yours, and what follows will meet you on the move. What comes next is not louder, it is heavier. This is the stage few anticipate correctly. You expect celebration, acceleration, visible reward. Instead, you meet refinement. Authority does not arrive wrapped in applause. It arrives wrapped in responsibility. This is the final test before inheritance. You have crossed the gate. You have sealed decisions and you are walking forward. Now heaven watches how you carry weight. Not pressure from outside, but authority from within. This phase is subtle, often misunderstood, because it looks ordinary while shaping something eternal. Scripture speaks to this moment with sobering clarity. It was proclaimed in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 2, verse 12. If we endure, we will also reign with him. Endurance comes before reigning, always. This is where many chosen ones feel confused. You expected doors to fly open, yet some feel heavier. You expected ease, yet discipline increases, but this is not delay, it is confirmation. God only refines what he intends to entrust. Look at how this plays out in everyday life. At work, you may notice expectations rise without explanation. People look to you for answers. Problems land on your desk others avoid. Recognition may lag behind responsibility. This is not exploitation. It is training. Authority is learned in obscurity, not spotlight. How you respond now determines how much weight you will carry later. In finances, you may find that overflow has not arrived yet, but stewardship is being tested. You are given just enough to manage well, not enough to waste. God watches how you handle margin before he expands it. Faithfulness here builds infrastructure for future abundance. In family and relationships, you may be asked to stay steady when others are reactive, to remain patient when dynamics are tense, to speak truth without force. This is endurance of the heart. Anyone can react. Few can remain anchored. This season feels slow because it is surgical. God is not speeding you through it because he is removing what would fracture under future pressure. Ego, impatience, the need to be seen, the need to be validated. These things crack crowns if left unchecked. You may feel alone at times, not abandoned, but set apart. Conversations that once fed you feel shallow. Old comforts no longer satisfy. This is not loss. This is recalibration. You are being trained to draw strength from depth, not distraction. Let me ask you something honest. How do you handle responsibility when no one is watching and no reward is immediate? That answer reveals readiness. The refining fire does not burn you, it reveals you. It shows where reactions still override wisdom, where pride still leaks, where fear still whispers. And each revelation is an invitation to mature. Here is the hope within this stage. Endurance is not endless. This phase has a ceiling. God does not test without purpose. Every quiet victory, choosing integrity, choosing patience, choosing consistency is counted. Nothing is wasted. Not one unseen choice. Think of a craftsman tempering steel. The heat is not cruelty. It is preparation. Without it, the blade snaps under pressure. With it, the blade holds. So does a chosen one. You are learning how to reign by learning how to remain. Remain faithful when progress feels slow. Remain disciplined when motivation fades. Remain humble when authority begins to surface. This is where calling becomes character. And character is what sustains what gifts attract. If you feel stretched, it is because expansion is coming. If you feel refined, it is because entrustment is near. Do not despise this season. Many are gifted, but few are grounded enough to endure what follows success. You are becoming grounded, quietly, intentionally, irreversibly. This is not the end of the journey. It is the strengthening of the vessel. And when the weight increases, you will not buckle because you were trained here. What feels like restraint right now is actually reinforcement. You are learning how to stand without rushing outcomes, how to carry silence without panic. This is where trust matures when nothing dramatic happens, yet you remain steady, choosing consistency over impulse, depth over display, over. Soon, what once felt heavy will feel natural. You will realize the weight did not increase, you did. Your capacity widened quietly, without announcement. And when responsibility expands again, it will not intimidate you, because you have already learned how to hold it without breaking. You are standing on the other side now, not because everything suddenly became easy, but because something inside you has settled. The door behind you did not slam shut with noise. It closed quietly, like a chapter ending without needing explanation. What changed was not the world around you, but the weight you carry within it. This is what few people tell you about obedience. It rearranges responsibility before it releases reward. On this side of the threshold, you are no longer guessing who you are. You may still be learning how to walk it out, but the question of whether you were called has lost its grip. The urgency that once felt like pressure has transformed into clarity. You are not rushing anymore, you are moving with intention. There is a scripture reserved for moments like this, not shouted but entrusted. The Apostle Paul wrote in his letter to the Corinthians, chapter 2, verse 9, "What no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love Him." Prepared, already arranged, already set aside. What waits beyond the door is not confusion, it is assignment. You begin to notice it in ordinary places. Your decisions sharpen. You say no faster, and yes, more carefully. You stop over-explaining yourself to people who were never meant to carry your future with you. Peace doesn't rush in, it settles. Like furniture finally placed where it belongs. At work, your presence changes before your position does. You speak with less urgency, yet your words land with more weight. Opportunities no longer chase you, they recognize you. You begin to discern which work drains you and which work deepens you. That discernment is part of your inheritance. In your finances, fear loosens its grip. You are still wise, still intentional, but no longer frantic. You plan with vision instead of panic. You understand now that provision is more than money, it is timing, relationships, ideas, favor. And favor finds those who stop grasping and start stewarding. In your relationships, something shifts quietly. You no longer cling. You no longer overextend just to be understood. Love becomes cleaner. Boundaries feel less like walls and more like doors with keys. Some people walk with you into this next season. Others bless you by letting go. Both are part of the preparation. This side of the door carries joy, but not the loud kind. It carries a steady confidence that does not need to announce itself. You are becoming someone others notice, not because you demand attention, but because your life explains itself. And here is the deeper truth: what you carry now is not only for you. Those who cross thresholds become signposts. Without preaching, without forcing, your life begins to whisper to others. There is more. You don't drag anyone through doors. You simply stand where the light is clearer, and those meant to follow recognize the glow. This is why connection matters not as obligation, but as alignment. When travelers discover a safe path through the mountains, they do not keep it secret out of pride. They mark it not with chains, but with stones stacked gently, so others don't get lost when the fog rolls in. Staying near voices and spaces that sharpen your vision is not weakness, it is wisdom. Liking this moment is like placing your foot firmly on the path, saying, "This is where I stand." Sharing it is like leaving a trail marker behind you, so someone else doesn't wander alone. Writing a comment is like signing your name at a crossing, proof that you were awake, present, and willing. And subscribing is not obligation. It is choosing to stay within hearing distance of a voice that reminds you who you are when the road stretches long. None of this is demanded. All of it is voluntary, and that is what makes it beautiful. Let me ask you one final question. not to test you, but to honor you, who might find courage simply by watching how you walk from here. Your journey does not end at the door, it expands. What lies ahead will require stewardship, humility, and consistency, but it will also give you a peace that does not evaporate under pressure. If this message felt less like instruction and more like companionship, honor that recognition. If passing it forward feels like lighting a quiet lantern for someone still searching, let it glow. If staying connected feels like choosing a seat at a table where truth is spoken without distortion, take it. If lending your presence through a comment, a share, a return feels like saying, "I'm walking this way," allow yourself that grace. You were never meant to walk alone, but you were always meant to walk freely. The door behind you is closed, the path ahead is open, and what has been prepared for you will meet you as you move. Stay where your spirit is fed, carry light where you walk, and walk knowing you did not miss this moment. You don't need a dramatic ending here. What matters has already landed. Some messages are meant to be consumed and forgotten. Others are meant to be kept not in bookmarks, but in posture. If something in this journey stayed with you, if a sentence lingered longer than expected, that is enough. Truth does not always announce itself. Sometimes it waits quietly to see if you will carry it forward. You are not required to do anything with what you've heard. No one is watching to see if you act fast enough or respond correctly. This was never about pressure. It was about presence, about noticing what resonated and allowing it to shape how you walk tomorrow and the day after that. If this message feels like something you want to pass on, not out of obligation but out of recognition, you're free to share it. Think of it like handing someone water you found refreshing. No explanation needed, no convincing required, just an offering. And if sharing doesn't feel right, that's okay too. You are allowed to keep what touched you, to sit with it, to let it work quietly beneath the surface. Some truths are meant to travel outward. Others are meant to take root inward first. Both are valid. Both are necessary. Maybe you'll remember one image. Maybe one question will return to you later. Maybe nothing feels urgent now, but something feels clearer. That's enough. This ending is not a conclusion. It's a pause, a place to breathe, a space where you decide, in your own time, what stays with you and what you leave behind. If this journey gave you language for something you've been carrying, honor that. If it simply reminded you that you're not alone in the process, let that be sufficient. You don't need to rush forward. You don't need to go backward. Just continue awake, steady, and honest. Whatever you carry from here, carry it lightly, and let what is meant for you remain.